what we've seen really is a lot of volatility. And we know that's coming from a number of different reasons. And the headline news are real, and the headlines are moving the markets probably more than we've ever seen. In the last year or two, I think we've had more 1% moves in any single day than we've seen for maybe the previous decade all the way back. And so for traders, they're looking to take advantage of those opportunities. The market likes to overprice, and then it likes to oversell. And so for short-term traders that want to trade momentum, Direxion lineup of ETFs is where we focus.
Talk to us a little bit about those trends that you're seeing, of course. So first and foremost, so we know that Jensen Huang was with Donald Trump, where they are talking about export controls. AI has been, a constant through the year. How are you guys playing the AI trade?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a perfect example. When we look at NVIDIA, as we started to trend into the most recent round of earnings, right, there was a lot of concern, but also forecasted up or down. So if you were a bull heading into NVIDIA, guess what? We offer a 2x levered bull ETF that'll give you twice the daily performance to the positive, to the bull side for NVIDIA. We also offer a bear fund. So if you're an investor who's thinking, I'm concerned about NVIDIA. So there's really two ways to play it. What we're seeing, though, generally, not just with NVIDIA had record earnings, right? It took a little while for the market to, I think, digest that. We're seeing it across all semiconductors. As you pointed on the screen, right? It was a really turbulent month for November. Swing traders loved it, right? Direction lineup of traders. They loved it because they could trade to the upside, then quickly shift to the bear side. But for a lot of investors, we were concerned. What's happening here? But if you look at the math and you look at the numbers, over 80% of the S&P 500 companies that reported the last round of earnings beat their earnings in a record format. Right, so we're still seeing the growth. We're seeing it play out in earnings. We're seeing it play out in the space. And so while there's always these short-term concerns around CapEx and some of the other budgeting that's happening around AI, NVIDIA chip makers, the reality is the long-term trend is still our friend. And so we do believe that going into 2026, we're looking at probably another really strong year.
So I have to ask you this. When we have these concerns about valuations, you have the bull and the bear scenario ready for investors to take advantage of. People are worried about a bubble bursting. Which way do you go?
Well, I think that's exactly it. So we know that the trend is our friend, as I mentioned, and that earnings are there. So the valuations, while high, continue to justify through the fact that these companies are making a lot of money, more than they ever have. However, what we do realize is because those valuations are so high, and yes, we do expect that to continue over the long term, over the short term, any little news in the market, any little hiccup is going to move all of the Mag 7, right? Each one of those Mag 7, whether it's earnings, whether it's a CEO comment, whether it's a presidential comment, we know that we're going to see those short-term moves, and those moves can be sometimes as large as 3, 4, 5, 10%. And so that gives traders an opportunity to say, well, I'm concerned about some small piece of news, I can trade the bear. But I recognize that the trend is tending to move upwards. So when that news clears out and the market starts to recover, they can trade the bull.
Now, I want to talk more about these single stock ETFs and the different products that you do offer, but I also want to know why you're here in Hong Kong, because we're looking at trading activity in the Hong Kong market. Will you be listing or cross-listing any of your products here?
Yeah, and that's exactly one of the reasons. So we have a team here that focuses on education, on working with a lot of the asset managers in the region. We know a lot of Asia-based investors like to utilize the Direction lineup of ETFs. That being said, if you've been tracking the Hong Kong market, you know this. The HKEX and the team there have really been leaning forward in terms of educating the local investors about how you can use ETFs instead of things like warrants, which can be very expensive, instead of things like futures, which can be very expensive. And so we're starting to see that migration where investors are saying, are ETFs right for me? Well, that's a perfect time for Direxion to step in, because we have a lot of education and we have a lot of ETFs for traders that make a lot of sense if you've been trading warrants, but you're realizing that there's a lot to offer through the HKEX with individual stocks or ETFs. That's where we want to step in. So yes, part of the things that we're working on right now is how do we bring the Direction lineup of ETFs not just to online brokers, but here in Hong Kong for somebody to be able to trade them on the HKEX.
About a quarter of your assets under management come from Asia. Will you be looking to branch out into any other markets?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So Hong Kong's a very large market for us. We're excited about that. We continue to invest here. We just went to a newer office space because we're expanding. So obviously Hong Kong, major market. We also see investors in Korea. are very active. They like to trade the markets. They like to trade the headlines, so they utilize Direxion lineup of ETFs. Similar in Japan, similar across really almost every Asia country. And what's been interesting is the regulators everywhere are focused on education. We love that. And so we lean in on education, and the more that the regulators and the exchanges and investors want to learn, that's perfect. That's Direxion weather for us. And so we're trying to build as much local education as we can, whether it be through language services, so that's not just in English. We are thinking about local markets. And so we're expanding. We're expanding in Asia Pac, and we love it here.